Good evening. Okay, that was sad. Good evening. Okay, one more time. Good evening. Thank you. Now you all sound like you're very excited to be here as much as I am, right? Great. My name is Diane Vu with the Office of Community Partnerships, and I would like to welcome you to our listening session for County Executive-Elect Marc Elrich here in Olney. What a great turnout. Thank you for being here. This is our third listening session. Well, it should be our fourth, but our first one got canceled due to inclement weather. We have one more session this week in Tacoma Park this afternoon, on Saturday afternoon. We've also added a session in Poolsville on December 11th, and hopefully we'll have the rescheduled date for Potomac finalized in the next day or two. And we are hoping to add a session in Bethesda as well. So please keep up to date. With our website. That's where we will get our updates. The updates are the website is at the top of your green handouts. Everybody has one of these. Okay, great. So you'll get a chance to hear from our county executive-elect shortly, and after that, we will start the listening session. I'm here to talk to you about the process. For those of you who know me, I am all about process. So we have two wireless mics, one held by Sean Ellis, our citizenship coordinator standing in the back, and we also have another mic held by Josephine Garnham in the back. So we'll have two mics going around on both sides of the room, okay? If you want to speak, just hold your hand, and the person will come around to you with the mic. You will have 2 minutes. Those of you who also know me know that I'm very punctual. So in fairness to everybody and to make sure that we get through as many questions as we can, everybody will have a maximum of 2 minutes, okay? Please do not try to take the mic out of the hand of the person holding the mic. That's why fire and rescue and police are here, right? So if we cannot get to your question, you have other ways to give feedback. We have note cards. Where are the note cards? Okay, Mimi Hassanin is holding some, and we'll also float around some other note cards. You can just write your comments on there, and we'll get them back and file them in a report that goes to the transition team for Mark and the transition folks to see. And you can also visit the website listed at the top of your green card. Go to listening sessions, add your voice. You can fill out that form, and we also can get your feedback that way also, okay? I would like to take a moment to recognize some elected officials that are in the room. Senator Ben Cramer, Senator Craig Zucker, Delegate Eric Lutke, and did I miss anybody else? Oh, yes. Delegate Pam Queen, I apologize. And did I miss anybody else? Okay, bathrooms are outside towards the door, and are there also transition members in the room? Please raise your hand or stand. I'd like to recognize the transition team for our county executive-elect as well. Feel free to also give those folks feedback as well. And so now, without further ado, let me introduce to you your county executive-elect.
So this is very cool. It's the third one of these, and I think you may be close to the 300 people that we got the other night. And for me, it's just amazing to have these many people engaged and want to come out after an election to talk about county government. I mean, that's really important, and I'm really glad to see you all here. I'm going to listen to questions, things I can answer. I'll answer things that I would have to make up an answer for. I will tell them to take notes. So if I can't answer it right, I'll make sure that we get your right answer later on. I'm really looking forward to this. So rather than take up more time talking now, I think we'll start. And the only question I have, Diana, since we started like 15 late, can we go 15 over so we don't take away? Will that work tonight?
Yeah, it's your county.
Okay. So we'll end, instead of ending at 8:30, we'll end at 8:45. So you can still get some more questions in.
Okay, Mark, to your right in the back. First question.
Good evening. Congratulations on your victory, and welcome to Olney. My name is George Sims. I reside in Olney, and the comments I'm making are my personal comments in my own individual capacity. I understand that a medical marijuana dispensary is scheduled to open next year at 18070 Georgia Avenue. That's a location less than 1,000 feet from where we're standing right now. I mention this because based on state law and federal law, controlled substance cannot be sold within 1,000 feet of a school. There are 2 elementary schools within 1,000 feet of the proposed location of this proposed medical marijuana dispensary. Olney Elementary School, where we're standing now, is within 1,000 feet of the proposed location. St. John's Episcopal Elementary School is on the other side of the street, also within 1,000 feet of the proposed location. Also, federal law prohibits controlled substances being sold within 1,000 feet of public housing. Public housing is also located within 1,000 feet of this proposed location. So my questions, Mr. Elrich, are twofold. First, why are we in the county permitting offices allowing controlled substances to be sold so close to not 1 but 2 elementary schools? Second, why are we knowingly permitting state law and federal law to be violated by allowing controlled substances to be sold within 1,000 feet of 2 different elementary schools? It's one thing to say that the federal government so far has not elected to prosecute states for the distribution of controlled substances, but in this case, there is a specific federal law designed to protect children that is prohibiting the sale within 1,000 feet of a school. So I'm asking, my request is to please ask your permitting officers to review and revisit this decision, allowing this facility to open here in Olney. Children deserve protection. State and federal laws should be complied with, and the opening should be stopped. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And so I didn't know that until you raised it, and I'll be county executive sometime around 11 o'clock on Monday. And Andrew Klein, who's going to be the CAO, do take note of that, and we will let the permitting people know that they cannot permit something within the 1,000 feet. And thank you for bringing it to my attention.
Thank you. I'm here to request that Maryland support common sense assisted outpatient treatment for the hundreds of thousands of mentally ill Marylanders, seriously mentally ill. I have a family member who's suffering from schizophrenia but can't get treatment. 3 years ago, his future looked good. He was highly skilled in his field, had a great job, friends, a car, an apartment, but as his mental health has slipped away, he's lost everything. Tragically, under the laws of Maryland, he cannot get treatment. Because he's not thinking clearly, he cannot even recognize he has a mental illness. He's been hospitalized several times, and doctors have told him he has a psychotic disorder and needs treatment immediately. While in a psychotic statement, he has attempted suicide. Despite all this, he firmly believes he's not mentally ill, and that his problem is he's being persecuted, the victim of a conspiracy. Under Maryland law, he can't be given the treatment he desperately needs unless he willingly decides to accept it, or unless he currently presents a danger to himself or others, a standard that's usually interpreted very narrowly. Sadly for him, he's not violent, except perhaps toward himself. In fact, after he attempted suicide, we petitioned the court and got him hospitalized, grateful that at last he would get treatment that would keep him safe. However, we were soon devastated to learn he still was not considered to currently present a danger to himself or others. He was released from the hospital a few days later, still psychotic and still untreated. Expecting a person who's suffering from psychosis to think rationally and not giving them treatment until they can come to their senses and accept treatment doesn't make sense. I don't want my loved one to waste years of his life in a state of untreated psychosis unnecessarily, or to commit suicide. Every day I send him notes to make sure he's still alive. Nobody should have to go through this. I urge that Montgomery County testify in Annapolis in support of common sense assisted outpatient treatment law that mandates involuntary outpatient treatment. It will save lives, and it's common sense.
So if you can get us a copy of what you've got, this is the kind of thing that I'd be happy to support. It makes a lot of sense, and you're not the only person who's struggling with this.
Okay, Mark, same spot in the back on your right.
Hi, my name's Debbie Amster with Jews United for Justice. I'm thrilled that you're going to be our next county exec and really appreciate the work that you've done to help move forward the $15 minimum wage in the county. Montgomery County prides itself on being a diverse community and a safe home for all residents. But ICE targeting our neighbors and tearing families apart, immigrants in our county live every day in fear. Will you support a community trust ordinance that prevents local agencies from engaging in civil immigration enforcement and allows our neighbors to breathe easily and trust our government?
So county policy is exactly that. We do not enforce immigration laws. We do not cooperate with ICE, except when we deal with a few cases of people who've committed violence and wind up in the jails, and that's a place where it makes sense to cooperate. But otherwise, we don't. And I'd be happy to support legislation that ensures. I think it's a bigger state issue than it is a Montgomery County issue right now. But I think this is a big deal, and we should not be enforcing the federal government's laws. And we need to figure out a better way to deal with immigrants than to do what they're doing. Part of what's been successful in Montgomery County has been our willingness to work with the community and to make sure they feel safe and they don't feel threatened. I can tell you our police department considers that level of cooperation essential for their ability to enforce laws in this county. So we are served better when we're cooperating and working with the immigrant community than when we're persecuting them. So I get it. Thank you.
Mark, to your left.
Good evening, Mr. Elrich. My name is Nicole Drew. I'm the president of the Montgomery County Commission for Women. I'm here with two other commissioners, Vice President Angela Whitehead-Quigley and Dr. Patty McClay. First of all, congratulations on your election, and we want to thank you for your support that you've given to us as a council member. For the benefit of those who are not familiar with the commission, we are comprised of 15 members from the county, and we advise the county executive, the county council, and the public on issues pertaining to women, and along with our executive director, Jody Finkelstein. We're established to improve the lives of women and girls in the county and to ensure equal and full participation in Montgomery County. And our current priorities are safety and justice for women, economic empowerment for women, and women in leadership. So on December 3rd, we will lose one of the two female county council members. And so my question to you, Mr. Elrich, is what are your plans to ensure that women are adequately represented in your administration on key decision-making roles? And also, what can we do as a commission to advance your agenda as it pertains to women in the county? Because we are here to support you and your agenda.
And I'm also here to support you and your agenda. I think this is a mutual relationship. So I would say, meet with me and work with me, and let's be clear about what kind of things we can do at the county level in the aspects of the agenda. We are looking hard to bring women into the administration. And I got to say, frankly, that years of sexism, we could add racism to this as well, you do not look around and find lots of people, particularly women of color, who are sitting in relatively high-level positions that you can say, I want you to come work over here and you're ready to manage a department. And that is the cost of keeping, women and minorities, frankly, out of the world of government and business, particularly in the management, for so very long. So we're going to look harder at our basic hiring policies, because you can't build a bench if you don't put people on the bench. And so we're going to make sure we do a better job at the start, and we're going to do everything we can. We're going to do national searches for a bunch of our positions, because given the limited opportunities that have been presented in this region, we've realized we're going to have to go broader to try to find the people we want. But thank you for your comment, and we are committed.
Okay, Mark, to your right.
Thank you for coming to our community, and thank you for beating your developer-backed opponent in the race.
It was a pleasure.
Many of us who live in the Sandy Spring and Ashton area are really appalled by the development that is happening, the urbanization of our rural area that is supposedly protected by a master plan. A massive townhouse project has been built next to the historic Sandy Spring building, and the Planning Commission approved 2 weeks ago a massive townhouse project where the old Sol d'Italia restaurant is in Ashton, as a result of a zoning text amendment that your council approved when you were on the council. The question that I have is, well, the problem is that the floating townhouse zone that was approved for this property does not limit the size of the townhouses. It only limits the number of units of townhouses. And what has happened is 20 units are going in that are 35 feet high and 3,000 square feet roughly in usable space on 2 acres. So there's no green space left. There's no space. It's completely incompatible with rural area. My question is there a way that we can get the floating townhouse zone amended so that when it is in rural areas, the floor-to-area ratio is reduced, limiting the size of these townhouses so that it's not just the number of units that are limited or the height of them, but the size of them, so that we don't have these massive developments going in?
I can have people look at that. I'm going to have a couple of people on my staff who are more expert in zoning them. One of them will likely be a former member of the planning board with a different perspective. And I'm very interested in this and other issues regarding size. I mean, it's hard to be against sprawl and then figure out how many units you can park in places as far away from transit as humanly possible. So this is, you can't have it both ways. You can't fight for a better climate and then say, but any development anywhere. And so I'm interested, and I'm happy to talk with you about it, and we'll have staff that can work on this.
Who would be the staff person we should contact?
For now, go through my office, and when we make announcements, then you'll know.
Mark, to your left.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Mr. Elrich. I'm an African-born and a commissioner for African Affairs in the state of Maryland, a member of the African Affairs Advisory Group, which I believe that you're very familiar with the good work that has been established from the county. So my question is, how do you plan to help us enhance this structure that has provided resources to the African community in Montgomery County that has allowed them to thrive and to be a very effective member in your community?
So first of all, we're keeping the Office of Community Partnerships, because one thing I've learned going around the county is that the immigrant community really feels that office has played a big role in making this county a welcoming place. And I give all credit to this Dyke Leggett. I mean, one of the most outstanding things he did was the decision, as he said, to make the table bigger when it was clear that everybody in our community wouldn't fit around the existing tables. And so we're going to make sure we work with you, make sure that agency stays intact. And I'm interested in knowing what people think they need to do more. Obviously, this all goes into a budget process. But I've told this to other groups, and I'll say it once tonight. I try not to prescribe solutions for people in whose shoes I do not walk. And so you know better what you need than if I sat up here and took, wild guesses and said, I'll do this, this, or this. So come and talk to me, work with me, and we'll try to develop things together that reflect the needs that people in the community have. And that applies to everybody. I mean, I do not presume to know everything that affects your neighborhoods and your communities. So I try to be a listener and then construct solutions based on what I hear rather than be a prescriber and tell you what you need.
I'll start on your right, Mark.
Hey, Mark, congratulations, and we look forward to your first term. I'm a new member of the Wheaton Urban District Advisory Committee, and a couple of months ago at the What's Next for Wheaton Forum, you came up with a wonderful concept about the new town square and plaza, and your concept about flipping the location between Lot 13 and the proposed site. So I'm wondering if you can expound upon that a little bit and maybe tie that together with your support for the new or potentially new Wheaton Cultural Arts Center and the utilization of those spaces.
So I don't know how many people are familiar with what we're doing in Wheaton, but where the triangle was across from my favorite sub shop, which I was going to since I was in high school, the Park and Planning is building a new building, and a bunch of government services are going to be moving to the same site. There was a large space to the north side, I guess that's north on that side, that was supposed to be an apartment building, and that development is not going forward. There was a small space in front of Park and Planning before Reedy Drive, and then on the other side of Reedy Drive was also supposed to be green. Somehow people conceptualized the green spaces on both sides of Reedy Drive as a park. Neither park is adequate, and Reedy Drive is not a good place to have a park. And that road is never not crowded enough to imagine kids or anybody else trying to traverse back and forth from green space to green space as a person normally would do in a park. I'm willing to discuss with people what plans or what the cost would be, but I'm interested in flipping the park to the bigger lot and giving Wheaton the true park and something that would be a center for the community rather than a postage stamp on either side of a road. If we're not going to develop it for housing, it seems like that would be a really good use of it. And I think, Wheaton ought to get a flagship center. We don't have enough green space in our urban areas anyway. And if we've been presented with an opportunity to create a center like that, I'm certainly interested in doing it.
Tying it together with the Cultural Arts Center?
Yeah, and so I don't yet have either a firm plan for it put on my desk or a POR, Program of Requirements. So I don't know the size and stuff, but one of the things I've thought about is the space on the other side of Reedy Drive, where the government building used to be, might be a location. There are a couple of possible locations, obviously, but Cultural Arts Center with decent government building and a big park on the other side might make this an interesting center for Wheaton. I'm happy to talk with WUDAC about that and work with the community and then see what our resources are and how much we can do. But thank you.
Mark, to your left.
Hello, good evening. I'm Evelyn Burton, the Volunteer Advocacy Chair of Parents for Care. We're a Maryland nonprofit serving families coping with serious mental illness. And we ask for your support, consideration of 2 state bills that we hope to have put forth this session to address the crisis in psychiatric treatment in our county. Approximately 1.1% of county residents have schizophrenia, and 2.2% have bipolar disorder, many with untreated psychosis. Extensive research shows that untreated psychosis causes permanent brain damage, worsens long-term outcomes, including job loss, homelessness, incarceration, violence, and suicide. The costs to the county are staggering, including lost tax revenue, police, jail, and homeless expenses. Parents for Care hopes to have a bill introduced to authorize evidence-based statewide assisted outpatient treatment, or AOT. AOT delivers psychiatric outpatient treatment under a civil judicial court order, so you don't have to commit a crime first, for high-risk adults who lack the capacity to recognize their need for treatment. Evidence-based AOT reduces hospitalization, homelessness and arrests over 70%, and has resulted in county cost savings of 40 to 50%. Maryland is only one of 3 states without AOT. We also plan to have a bill introduced to require state psychiatric hospitals to accept inmates from county jails within 10 days of being certified by mental health professionals as needing hospitalization. The Montgomery County Correctional Facility has reported waits of up to 6 months. Without needed hospital treatment, county inmates are released more dangerous and psychotic than when they entered the jail. I hope that we'll be able to discuss this with you as the bills go forward.
That'll be easy, and I support both of those pieces of legislation. I don't know if people realize it, but Montgomery County's jail facility is the largest mental health institution in the county, and about 30% of the people who are there present with mental health issues. And the jail's not equipped to be a mental health institution. We don't have the personnel, we don't have the treatments, we don't have the resources to deal with the kind of problems that are being presented. And so you get to serve your sentence and then return to the streets, no better off than when you went in, and probably worse off than when you went in. So I'm very interested in this, including the legislation to compel hospitals to take the patients. We have a dearth of beds, and it's not just a Montgomery County problem. It's a huge statewide problem. So thank you for raising that.
Up front on your right, Mark.
Hey, Mark, congratulations. As you know, my name's Kerry Lamari. I've been a civic activist for over 40 years, and I've fought with you to try to balance infrastructure with growth. And I've worked on numerous master plans to try to achieve exactly that. And in master plans, we do both allow the growth, but we also provide the infrastructure. My fear is that with BRT, they were kind of like not looking at the master plan recommendations anymore like we used to. Today, 5% of the population use buses. That means 95% are using other things. Houston, Texas took a different approach than we did with respect to BRT. Transit is part of the solution, but it's not all of the solution. We've been waiting in Olney for Norbeck Road for a long, long time for the widening of Norbeck. That's a state road, but it requires county support. We've already been on the the Consolidated Transportation Program once. We were kicked off because they wanted to refund the Purple Line, so they took the money from Norbeck. We talked about the Montrose Parkway. That's also a road that's very needed in Montgomery County. It reduces traffic on Randolph Road 25%. It reduces traffic on Twinbrook Parkway 37%. It takes care of the most dangerous railroad crossing in the state of Maryland, the Montrose crossing. Where do you stand on that? Do you support the master plan infrastructure? We already have the growth. And do you support, maybe scaling down BRT to something like Houston, Texas did? Okay, that's enough.
So look, Kerry, you and I have been through this a lot.
A lot.
And you guys can probably guess because we know each other pretty well. So look, I'll say this about BRT. If, using your logic, 0 people used the metro before the metro was built, and if that's your metric, how few people use the system, which is mired in traffic and can't move you effectively, which is what our bus system is right now, then you would conclude that you'd never do any more with buses. BRT is different than buses, and if it's done right and done in dedicated lanes, you can get a way different level of service in buses, and people avoid buses because they come irregularly, they're stuck in traffic, they don't offer any benefit over sitting in your car, except you're sitting in a bus, and if you're on a ride-on system, you usually get a long scenic tour of everything between where you start and where you're going. So my view is a properly built BRT system, not nickel and dime so it doesn't function properly, would be useful. And the cost estimates are way less. What I proposed was a lot of single reversible because you guys know up in Olney, your traffic is southbound in the morning and northbound in the evening. I do not need 2 lanes of buses. I need a southbound lane in the morning and flip it around and make it a northbound lane in the evening so it has minimal intrusion into the neighborhoods. I don't have to take people's houses. I don't have to get rid of businesses. I think there's a rational way to do it. Montrose Parkway was never my favorite road. The terminus of the parkway is where it is right now because it points at the other parkway, which was then supposed to be built and expanded to the ICC. But on the other hand, I do agree that the crossing over the railroad tracks is a problem, and I've asked Park and Planning staff to look at coming over the railroad tracks on Randolph and heading toward Veers Mill Road a little up west from where the current terminus point is. So we still may be able to accomplish a link to Veers Mill without going as far down and over as the current plan calls for. So I'm not saying no to anything, but I think just because somebody put something on the plans a long time ago doesn't make it a good plan. I believe you and I fought against the ICC, which was on a plan for God knows how many years, and we didn't think it was a particularly bright idea, but it didn't stop us from fighting it. So what I'm saying is I'm interested in a complex, I'd say a complicated set of solutions, and I know everything isn't a bus and everything isn't a road. So I'll continue to work for solutions that actually solve problems. The good news is no development has been stopped for the lack of the Montrose Parkway, which means nothing has failed for the lack of the Montrose Parkway. So it hasn't yet gotten in the way of our development plans. But I'll continue to work on it. And I would be happy to involve you when I start looking at another way to cross over from Randolph to Veers Mill. Thank you.
Mark, to your left.
Good evening, Mark. Congratulations. I'm so glad that the voters recognized substance over flash. I'm a member of the Montgomery County Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions. This consortium of faith communities believes there is an urgent moral call to address climate change. I have a three-part question. I won't talk long. I understand that the county has a draft plan to address the climate emergency. When will this plan be shared with the new council members and with the general public? Second question, will you make the climate emergency your #1 priority? And third, I want to purchase an electric car. My kids have range anxiety over that, and they don't want me to get an electric car. Will you sponsor a program to subsidize the price of electric and hybrid cars for county residents and subsidize the cost of charging stations for homeowners, religious institutions, and other public locations?
Okay, so I'm going to avoid a Christmas tree here. So the good news, if you want a charging station, the state actually subsidizes, gives a very large grant towards charging stations. I know because I drive a Leaf. I experience range anxiety. But also I bought a 2013 Leaf. The new Leaf has a range of about 150 miles, and there are a bunch of electrics that are coming out now that are decently priced, that have a much better range, and there are plug-in hybrids. There's one now that's at 50 miles, and so you're getting up there where it actually makes it more feasible to do that. We don't have a plan. Pardon me?
When you're 80 years old.
You go to a dealer, you'll find them. And on the bright side of my staff, if you ever saw Ike, he arrived everywhere in a Suburban. And I kind of find it impossible for me to talk about climate change and be delivered in Suburbans. So I've told them they have to look at either a hybrid or a Chevy Bolt for me. And the police have got to figure out how they're going to fit in there. But I can't talk. I said if I can get in there, they can get in there. But I can't talk one way and then sit in a nice, comfy Suburban and be delivered all over the county. So I'm going to, live what I talk, and when I get rid of my Leaf, I'm going to go and get another hybrid, or actually, Leaf is all electric. I'm trying to stay all electric. Yeah, but it's not made by union workers. I was going to buy one, but I thought about that, and then I said, this would not be a good message either. So now if I could talk to Musk and talk some sense to him, that would be different. So I do agree about, more of an infrastructure with recurring charging stations in public garages so people can actually find the charging stations. I found there are some places where you find them on the street now where you didn't used to see them before. On the climate change stuff, we don't have a plan. We just passed a resolution last year setting 2035 as the target. Nobody's got a plan for getting to zero by 2035 because some of the technologies that are going to be needed to get there just don't exist right now. I mean, it's easy to imagine electric houses and it's easy to imagine electric cars, but electric apartment buildings and office buildings where you have a very small roof footprint for solar collectors cannot possibly supply the electricity for the building that sits under the collectors. So there needs to be more work done. But we set the goal, just so you all know, we set a goal of zero for 2035. And I'm not a fool. I know that zero is really, really hard number to get to. I can't even honestly say that I know for sure that we'll get there. But what I knew and my colleagues knew, and Tom Hucker was a huge ally in this, if we had set a goal of 30% or 50%, we'd have achieved it. And we'd still be in deep trouble. And we'd still be saying, now how do I go on? So my view was you set the goal at zero. You'll never be able to sit back and say, my job is done. You'll always have to look at what you're doing and say, can I make it better? Can I do this better? Climate change is absolutely happening. Even in the latest poll I saw today, something like 64% of Republicans actually believe in it now. And a scary thought that it's taken this long to get there, but we have to make this a priority. So the decisions we make on vehicles and things like that are going to look toward what we can do. I'm going to look at more solar on county buildings. I'm not going to stop until we get as far down the road as I can. I'll either hire someone or put together a group of people. This is, it's not like I can hire someone and they're going to go out there and come up with a magic formula and say, do this or do that. So I'm interested in having somebody spearhead the effort, but I think a lot of this is going to rely on continual research. When I first got on the council, which is 12 years ago, Raleigh, North Carolina they'd done an article about Raleigh where they had put LEDs in all their garages. And 12 years ago, when LEDs were expensive, it was still cost effective for Raleigh to put them in. We're not there now. And so there's a lot of work we can do without a czar telling me what to do. I mean, it's a lot of the low-hanging fruit out there, but I'm committed to it, and I've told people I support having somebody in a climate office who focuses on this and the kind of innovation it's going to take to get there. It's not complete, and yeah.
All right, right here in the center.
Yeah.
Hi, Mark. On November 30th, 2017, the Montgomery County Planning Board held a public hearing on the Leisure World Board of Directors site plan application to tear down the existing administration building, put up a parking lot, and destroy 60 mature trees in their goal of building a new administration building. At the public hearing, our Leisure World group of concerned citizens testified against construction of the new building, citing a petition signed by over 2,000 Leisure World residents, requesting a community-wide vote be taken on the new building. This petition had previously been submitted to the Leisure World Board of Directors, who basically blew us off. The planning board members who heard this testimony were appalled that the Leisure World Board of Directors and their general manager, Kevin Flannery, had so callously disregarded the wishes of a very sizable portion of our community. So upset was the planning board that they deferred action on the site plan, while instructing the Leisure World Board of Directors to return to the community to gain consensus. What Kevin Flannery did then was to go to each of the 29 mutuals of Leisure World and present his tweaked version of the original site plan. When asked why was he not trying to gain consensus, he replied that he was never instructed to do so by the board. I'm almost done here. The reconvened planning board hearing will most likely be in late January 2019. Do you personally have any suggestions that we could use to stop this steamroller from destroying our community?
So I don't know a lot about Leisure World governance, but you've got to, you've got leadership and you've got a manager. You've got a means of changing your manager. So you need, he's not a manager for life. And he is. You don't have a board that can. But the managers aren't elected. But what's the role? What is the role? I can't debate this with you because I don't know enough about your governance structure. Then you should talk. But we have a process. If you've got an issue that's a common ownership community issue, we've got a place to go to in consumer affairs to try to deal with that. So you can meet with me, but the other thing you need to do, if you ask me what you'd do, I would go gather another 2,000 signatures, give it to the planning board and say, obviously there's no consensus. Because if what the planning board asked for was consensus, and you can show back up there and say, same problem, there is no consensus, that would be my thought is your best hope of doing that. The executive, unfortunately, cannot intervene in this. I don't have a path to intervene, so you've got to make a persuasive case to the planning board. But I'm happy to talk to you about governance structure.
Mark, to your left.
Good evening, Mark. My name is Jason King-Jones. I'm the Senior Associate Artistic Director and Director of Education at the Olney Theater Center. We welcome you to Olney. I also have with us Debbie Ellinghaus, our Managing Director, and our President of our Board of Directors and Olney resident, Stephen Klein. I have just a couple of questions. For 80 years, Olney Theater Center has been the cultural anchor for a large portion of this county. Additionally, Olney Theater Centers provides in-school educational offerings from Brookville to Wheaton throughout the academic year and throughout the entire year on our campus here in Olney. We are also the second largest employer in Olney, Maryland. The questions that I have for you are, how do you see your county government supporting a small business like Olney Theater Center? And how do you see that every corner of this county has access to the arts and education?
Well, I've supported consistently county budgets that fund the arts, and we continued funding arts even during pretty difficult times when we were forced to make pretty severe cuts in the county budget. Because I think civilization is more than police, fire trucks, and schools, and that arts and things like that are really critical to keeping people's quality of life. They offer opportunities for adults and young people to learn how to express themselves and engage constructively. So I'm a big fan of this. I used to play in a rock and roll band. I'm biased. So I've always been supportive. I'm going to continue to be supportive. I don't look at the arts as the first place to cut. And I think the work you do is really important. And they've done a pretty good job of making a case that the arts provide economic vitality, and there's a lot of other revenue that's generated in other places in the county via the arts. And my only other comment would be, I thought the Ale House was the center of culture. But it's a great institution.
Okay, Mark, outside on your right.
Thank you so much for hosting this, and congratulations. My name is Adila. I'm with Islamic Center of Maryland. Being with an Islamic institution, I get to deal with a lot of kids, and we hear about their issues, and as the environment in Montgomery County and all over U.S. has been changing, we've done Know Your Rights workshop, anti-bullying workshop, bystander intervention workshops. We're doing a bunch of things. But recently, so my question is more as a parent, Montgomery County hosted a youth forum. I took a bunch of kids, not all Muslim. I'm Girl Scout and a Boy Scout leader. Put the kids in my car, said, we'll get SSL, let's go to this youth forum. You were there as well. And I was very interested to see the room was all diverse as Montgomery County is, minorities and others. And I said, what are the kids going to talk about? Most of them came with their prepared papers. And as the evening progressed, one kid after another came with the same problem: bullying. And a bunch of times, all of you answered those questions, but then the kids would keep coming back with, it's not being addressed in the schools. They're watching outdated forums. They don't have a way of escalating the issue. The teachers tell them to go away. So we had that forum. We listened to the kids. We were all shocked. I was shocked. I asked my son, why didn't you tell me? Oh, Mom, but you know this happens in school, right? So what's our next step? As Montgomery County, I know Board of Education was not there. What do we do next to make our kids feel safe in school? Thank you.
So, Magister, and there are a couple of things. One is you have to expect the political leadership in the county to be aggressive and out front and opposing and trying to talk to people about the importance of not allowing people to bully. We have to do that, and you know, too often people are silent, and too often people talk about one group, but they don't want to talk about when it's coming from their group. And I think there needs to be an acknowledgement that this problem crosses everybody, and we've got to figure out, you know, from the top how we push back. Frankly, you know, I was a school teacher for 17 years, and one of my first experiences was having some kids complain to me about being inappropriately hit and pushed on the playground. And when I went to the playground supervisor, I was told boys will be boys. And, you know, if as long as that is an acceptable answer, then things are not going to change. And you send the message to a girl that this is something you should expect and endure and shut up. And the boys get the message, well, obviously this is expected behavior. I don't think we do enough and say enough. And I've been through some of the programs that the schools run. I just think you need very frank discussions with kids about what's acceptable behavior and what is not acceptable behavior. I don't need to do some of the things that people do, which are very touchy-feely. I think, you know, there's a time for firmness in saying to people, you cannot do this, and it will not be tolerated. And I think, you know, there's been a lot of criticism of schools for, you know, teaching liberal values, and I just got to say human decency and respect are not liberal values. They should be human values. And we need to not be so shy about saying we have values here that we want to preserve and be willing to speak out on it. But thank you for raising that.
Mark, to your left.
Hi. First, I want to say congratulations. My name is Philip Nash. Speaking in my professional role, I've been teaching Asian American Studies at the University of Maryland for over 20 years. And I just want to say thank you to you and Mr. Leggett and the other people here in this room to see the number of Asian Americans here in staff positions, in elective positions, in appointed positions here in the county is really gratifying. When I go around the rest of the country and I talk to people, they are amazed when I tell them how much Asian Americans have been involved and have been welcomed into this county. So I want to say thank you for that. As a parent, I just want to support what some of our previous speakers have said about the assisted outpatient treatment, and I'm happy to hear that you're supportive of that. I just want to remind the other people in the room that we are now 47th out of 50. There are 47 other states that support AOT already. Tennessee just passed. And Maryland is so great. We do so many things well. I hope that we'll join the justice officials, police officials, healthcare officials. Everybody says we need some form of AOT. So I welcome the chance to work with you to get that passed.
Thank you. I don't think anybody should say Maryland does mental health well. Maryland hasn't done mental health well in all the time I've been involved in political life. It has been a neglected area for the state of Maryland. They got in trouble once for the absolute neglect of this area. And so I think people need to continue to push on the state government and the governor. And this is not a Democrat-Republican problem. This was a problem of how people valued mental health and the investment we need to make sure that we take care of folks in this community. So thank you.
To your right, Mark, up front.
Thank you. My name is Lynn Nash. I live in the Saybrook community of Gaithersburg, and I'll be here representing the Friends of Kelly Park, a coalition of 5 neighborhoods who are trying to save Kelly Park. We're joined by almost 2,200 petition signatures. So congratulations on your election, your positions on military and veterans, schools, fiscal responsibility, and transportation made my decision very easy. But also, thank you for attending the Montgomery County Public School Capital Improvement Plan meeting. Your presence demonstrated to me your interest in our faltering schools. While we live in the richest county in the nation, or one of them, we have some of the most overcrowded schools in the nation, too. You heard at the SIP about the extreme overcrowding that is occurring at Gaithersburg Elementary. We have maxed out the number of portables, and we have a school that is currently 125 students over capacity. Lunch starts at 10:30. Kelly Park is a 27-acre park built over 30 years ago. It is the only multi-use park east of 355. It has 3 baseball fields, a volleyball, basketball, and tennis courts, as well as a tot lot. Has protected wetlands, and which make in a 100-year floodplain, which make it environmentally fragile. But MCPS wants it because the land is free. They want to build a 3-story, 740-kid school in the middle of our park. Now, we're not opposed to schools. In fact, we welcome it. We went out and found MPCS, an alternate site that is less than half a mile away in the same area, less fragile, has more buildable land, and would create a campus-like atmosphere that would promote economies in such areas as logistics, IT, and IT as examples. While schools are school board issues, let me remind you that it's you and the council that have to fund it. And this is a complex issue. We've prepared a background paper and booklet for you. We hope that you will require MCPS to revisit their decision and select a better site. Please help us save Kelly Park.
So I look at the size of your book with great fear. I have several books like that I have to read. But I get the gist of your arguments. That's a good thing. Look, nobody's confused about what I ran my campaign on. It had something to do with school overcrowding and this mess we've made out of congestion. The continual approval of projects with no plan to build schools has got to come to an end. But I can tell you this, when I was on the council, I was known as the 8-1 vote. Well, I was the 1 vote on land use policies. I wasn't the 1 vote on other stuff. We pretty much get along. But our use of land and our willingness to approve things when there is no infrastructure, no plan to get it, and no financial plan to pay for it is irresponsible. And I've had people say, listen to these debates, that overcrowding and congestion are signs of our success. They're not signs of success. They're signs of mismanagement. There's no way we can't grow and grow responsibly. But the people who benefit from my taking a 2-story building and turning it into a 20-story building should pay and help make it possible to provide the infrastructure that we need. And you've got to make your voices heard. You did a good job in the election. Nobody could argue that we did not debate this issue in the election, whether it was in nasty emails and these lovely ads that went out and everything. This thing got vetted, and the voters in this county said they want responsibility. You need to reinforce that, and you need to make your presence felt at school board meetings and planning board meetings, because this is important. If we don't change the way we're doing this, we're going to get way behind. We are already we have gone to $1.6 billion in backlogs in school constructions and modernization. I remember when I ran with Blair Ewing in 2002, and we said we have a $500 million backlog, and that seemed enormous. This is ridiculous. It's beyond enormous. So
it's also concerning that our kids may not actually go to the school that they are placing in our park, like they can't go to the middle school that is in our neighborhood.
So look, I'm very supportive of this. I'm happy to meet with you. But at the end of the day, all of you who are concerned about this, you've got to make this the man in this jacket there, yes. You guys need to make this your issue. Seriously. Thank you.
Back left.
Congratulations on winning the election. My question is sort of building on the earlier comment, and she took a lot of my thunder, so I'll go right to it. This school was built for 600. It's at 110 capacity. It's a great school. It's my son's school. During the campaign, you talked about changing how developers pay fees, and it's why they funded to go against you. So I'm curious when we'll actually see the proposal for the new structure. And I'd also encourage you, because there's going to be a well-funded campaign against it, to move forward and to come back to the people if they're holding you up. But I'd like to see details, please. Thank you.
So we're going to work on a plan for both transportation and schools. We've got to figure out how we're going to do this. One thing I would like to avoid, and I'll give you an example of something we did. In Bethesda, we approved a boatload of development for which there's no room in the school. So we created a phantom project. We put a project in the budget for which there is no money, and it will sit there until it gets a PDF, which is the document that says we're going to build this. At the moment, the school system says we're going to build it. That then goes into the budget, and what happens is if it costs $20 million or $30 million, $30 million of somebody else's buildings get pushed back. And what's happened for years now is that if we pick projects in our favorite areas and let them go forward, and then we create a phantom project, that phantom project is continually pushing back people who've been waiting 10 years, 15 years, 20 years for improvements in their schools. And it's not right to take the people who've lived here and dealt with these problems for years, and every time there's a shiny new bauble in some place, we decide the shiny new bauble takes precedent over the rest of the people in this county. So pay attention, folks. This election does not resolve this problem, and I need 5 votes on the council to get people to look at these things differently.
Mark, out here on your right.
Good evening, Mark. I'm Matt Quinn. I'm with the Greater Olney Civic Association, GOCA. And our big issue right now is that, as you know or may know, obviously, Olney is not an incorporated area. And we feel as if we have a lack of say in some of the developments. And sometimes that development is only a permitting issue, but it has a big impact on traffic going southbound, such as a donut shop. But it's impactful to a lot of people. And so what we would ask from you is the opportunity to work with you to have some impact on changing the way permitting and other development occurs in Olney so that we can have a say. We're not looking for control. We want to be able to have a say. And we've reached out to the Olney Town Center. I don't need to speak for Lydia. We reached out to the Olney Chamber of Commerce, John Holtheiser. He agrees with us as well. And so what we're looking for is that opportunity to have a say in how things are done inside of Olney, to include something such as a large 350-foot cell tower that's going to be put at the intersection of 97 and 200, and we're not really sure what problem that's solving. We do understand that currently our first responders are doing well, so I don't know whether that's resolving a first responder issue, if it's resolving a next-gen 911 issue. We really don't know, and we feel that there are times when things are just saying this is how it's going to be.
So the towers are solving a 911 public safety issue. And I don't know if that's the only place they could have put a tower. I've already met with people who suggested there are other locations. And people got into this late. And so I'm willing to go back and try to work with the state to look at other locations. The problem with what you're talking about on the development end of it is once it's been approved by Park and Planning and somebody has the right to build something, all permitting does is make sure, and all they can do is to make sure that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted.
Sometimes there is no real planning component to it. There's just permitting because the footprint doesn't change. And so, and we have worked with permitting and planning before and have been very successful once we're asked to get involved. And so the situation with the donut shop, we weren't asked to get involved. And that has been a negative impact to southbound traffic on most mornings during Monday through Friday.
So who usually asks you to get involved?
The planning department and sometimes the attorneys for those development projects.
Okay, so we should have a conversation about how we can best let people know what's coming down the pike so you can respond and get engaged.
Left back, Mark.
Hi, my name is Nicole Zimmerman. I'm a case manager at Help in the Home LLC in Rockville. We provide housing and case management to those with serious mental illness, such as schizophrenia or bipolar. You've heard from some of my colleagues already, and I wanted to clarify to you in the audience that the court-ordered assisted outpatient treatment is for the severely mentally ill. So you mentioned that Maryland is not good with mental health. This is a different level. So I want to clarify that. And this is also to keep individuals out of the hospitals and out of jails. So it's not, we do need the beds in the hospitals, we need something in jail, but this is to keep them out. And so I'm here to talk about the dire need for it. And it's obvious a lot of our clients lack the capacity to process reality and understand their illness. One client with schizophrenia, who I'll call John, was involuntarily hospitalized 12 times in the past 4 years. After each hospitalization, he stopped outpatient treatment, and the cycle repeated. He was arrested once and was kicked out of 3 apartments for property damage and disturbances. The homeless shelter banned him because he threw a knife and fortunately embedded in the wall behind his human target. It's only by chance that he has not harmed himself or anyone else. A couple weekends ago, we also had 2 other clients cycle through a hospital stay and get discharged with only a promise not to take medications and not to risk their safety again. Each time this happens, we work with the family and try to ease their constant fear for safety of their loved ones. As I mentioned earlier, there is also very high costs to not having this plan in place. And so I am just asking you, as others have, to please support the statewide AOT legislation and implementation, because I fear without this AOT, the next time I testify and talk in a session like this, John and others will be dead.
Thank you.
Out here on your right.
Am I on? Yes. Hi, Mark. It's Lydia. My name is Lydia Rappold, and I'm currently serving as the chairperson of the Olney Town Center Advisory Committee. And I'm actually speaking in tandem with what Matt was speaking about the purposes, well, actually of the Olney Town Center Advisory Committee, which was mandated in the 2005 Olney Master Plan. And one of its purposes is to make recommendations to the County Planning Board in order to preserve the character of Olney as documented in this. Here's some more reading for you. There's a booklet, which it's very skinny, that was put together by volunteers over a period of 5 years. Thank you. During the past several years in particular, we believe that arts input has deteriorated, so much so that we're informed about development after the fact. This donut shop is an example, McDonald's is an example, Jiffy Lube is an example. However, when we are involved, good things happen. Safeway, the Goddard School, and Chick-fil-A, which received all its permits, and the sign is going to be smaller. So we'd like to know how you proceed this process and how you as the county executive and the county council can reestablish a meaningful voice of our committee and GOCA and the Chamber of Commerce so that the Olney Town Center and the environment, how the Olney Town Center and the environment are perceived. I have one last sentence, and then I'm done. We believe, well, actually, I have 2 sentences. That we believe. That was the third one. Oh, all right. Well, we believe that there's a gap between what the developers want and how it's implemented, but we also believe that if you use us, good things happen here.
So what I'll do is sit down and talk with you. What I need to understand is when you get notified and when you don't get notified and what processes you're not notified about. Because, for example, if it's a matter of things that are going only to the county for permitting, then there's no reason that if the county gets a permit for any kind of significant renovation of a space or new construction, that we couldn't notify, the surrounding community or your committee that an application's been made.
Well, you're going to receive an invitation from me to attend one of our
Okay.
meetings in the spring.
So I think this is solvable, but I need to understand what mechanisms are working so I can figure out what mechanism has to be put in place. Thank you.
Okay, so just process-wise, sorry, that got your attention. We have about 25 minutes left. So if we don't get to your question, again, please fill out the note cards. Mimi Hassanin has some, Josephine Garnham in the back of the room, Daniel Koroma, and Juan Deng. And then drop them off on the table on your way out, or please visit the website, go to Add Your Voice under Listening Sessions and fill out that form, okay?
Mark, we got a question right here in the middle of the aisle.
I'm translating. So this is Ana Cavarete. She's a resident here of Olney. She and her family are here. And she wants to know if and how you might improve the interaction between the immigrant community in our county and our police department, especially in view of what's happening at our country's borders and all the fear that it's engendered.
Well, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, the behavior or the policy of the police department have not changed. What we've been trying to do, and I've gone to a number of places, I've been to meetings in the schools where we've met with the community to reassure them that our policies haven't changed. I mean, no matter what nonsense comes out of Washington, doesn't mean we're going to do it here, or we're going to aid or abet it either. So it may be that we just need to continue to have people go out and do rounds with community leaders, whether it's churches or folks in apartment complexes, and talk with them about what we're doing to make sure they know that nothing's changed. I have no intention of changing our policies because I think they're working.
To your right.
Good evening. My name is Caitlin Gardner, and I am a homeschooled student from Damascus, Maryland, and I've led civil discourse and political awareness seminars all around the state of Maryland. Over the last few years, I have seen divides in our county, state, and country become more and more pronounced. From partisan issues to agriculture and education, you name it, and people seem to be able to find anything to antagonize each other over. These arguments provide little room for much-needed active listening, civil dialogue, and search for common ground that could bring healing to our communities. How do you plan to help foster productive civil dialogue across our county to decrease these divisions between our communities?
Well, I think, part of what we're trying to do in listening sessions is go out to communities and just talk. I mean, I think we need more conversation, and that's what we're trying to do, and we're going to continue to do this. I mean, the council over the past years has had a series of meetings that we do every year around the county to put us in touch with people so we can just sit down and have conversations. And I'll say that, pretty much all the time the level of conversation has stayed pretty civil even when people had disagreements. So I think we need to encourage more talking. I think it's, I don't know what they're doing in the schools right now, but, it's conceivable that more all-school talking or, talking by grade levels where people actually get to express what they're feeling and letting people hear how people see or hear or perceive what other people do might be, educational and helpful to people. But I'm a big believer in conversation. I mean, if you sit where I do, you have to deal with people who disagree with you all the time. And you just have to realize that, at the end of the day, you probably don't disagree on all that much, but you can certainly blow it way out of proportion. And we need to be responsible and not let it get out of control. But if you have suggestions on things we could do, I'd be happy to hear them.
Mark, middle aisle, back here.
My stand up? We all know that the national debt is over $20 trillion, and it's increasing at about $100 billion a month or a year. And several years ago, I tried to find out what the county's indebtedness was, And it took a while to get an answer, but as I remember, it was over $3 billion, and I think our debt service is over $100 million. Now, I'm not an acolyte of Robin Ficker, but he does make sense in certain senses. And I also learned that the county's revenue is flat. With interest rates going up, I think, don't we need to really look at the fiscal situation and publish that periodically? Because from what I know, $100 million would build at least 3 or 4 new schools every year, and which is money down the drain. We're paying rent for the use of other people's money, and we're one of the richest counties in the nation, and I don't see why we're doing that.
So our debt came from a decision to use low interest rates to accelerate the construction of schools, because we had overcrowded schools. During the previous administration, when we had really large growth in the county, we didn't build fire stations, we didn't build police stations. We not only didn't build rec centers, we allowed a number of rec centers to fall into a severe state of disrepair, and you can't pay for that out of current funds. There's not enough tax money left over when you pay the normal operating of a government to also spend a few $100 million a year trying to build something. One high school was costing us $130 million a year. Now, hopefully, the school system is going to start looking at how they build schools and whether they should do what the county's doing with libraries, which is focusing on refreshes rather than knocking the thing down and starting all over again. And I'm hoping that the school system is going to be a little bit more thoughtful about how they go about building and addressing their existing physical needs. But debt and interest payments are a result of building things that people in the community wanted. So it's very hard. If I could have a lower debt if we had not spent all the money we spent on schools. So you'd have less debt, but you'd also, your kids would be sitting in schools that are even more overcrowded than they are today. Or the fire stations that we built around the county wouldn't be there to serve you. There is no free ride in all of this, but we are committed, and the one reason I picked Andrew Klein to be my CAO is he is an expert in restructuring government. And what we're looking to do is, be blunt about this. If taxes are the solution to everything, then you never have to examine what you do. You can just say, I can raise taxes. We know that's not the climate we're in right now. So we're going to look at everything the county does and the way we do everything, and we're going to figure out how can we be less wasteful, how can we be more efficient, where we have silos, where people aren't talking to each other, where we have duplication. We're going to look to take the duplication out. We're going to work with our workforce because contrary to what the Washington Post thinks, the people who actually work here understand their jobs better than anybody. And if we're going to figure out how we make this place more efficient, we're going to involve the workforce we have in making this a more efficient place. So my goal is actually to figure out how I can deliver more out of the dollars we already have. The needs aren't decreasing. It's not like I could figure out how to save money and then give people a tax cut, because that won't get you your schools built. It won't get you treatment for people who need treatment for disabilities or mental health. But I need to do that. If I want to do early childhood education, the money to do that will not appear magically. And so if we're not going the tax route, it's got to come out of the funds you're already giving us, and we need to be better stewards of the money that you're giving us. And I'm absolutely committed to that, and I'm going to have an administration that understands that we need an attitude of continuous improvement so that we can do a better job delivering the things you want in a responsible way.
Outside on your right, Mark.
Good evening, Mark. My name is Brian Dickey. I'm a member of the local DSA chapter and the Silver Spring Justice Coalition. Back in June, Robert White was unjustly killed by local police in an encounter that should never have happened or escalated in the way that it did. Myself and other members of the coalition do not feel what happened and the county's role in the investigation in response to this killing was in any way acceptable or conducive to a process of healing in the community. The unaccountable killing of Robert White only serves to prop up our police force as an organization which dominates the community instead of serves, with our marginalized communities paying the highest price for this. In order to create a county where the whole community feels safe and not just the most privileged, and the police truly serve, we ask this. Introduce and pass legislation requiring police officers to have liability insurance and require that such liability insurance premiums increase with every allegation of misconduct and brutality, similar to the way that us civilians are penalized for bad driving records. Release all Officer Badgegar's disciplinary records during his career. If they are not available by law, then we demand that the law be changed such that disciplinary records of police officers be made available to the public, just as the investigations and disciplinary records of physicians and therapists who are dangerous to the public have their records publicly available. Have the mobile crisis unit be available to be first responders to de-escalate situations involving distressed individuals, instead of requiring that the police have to call in the mobile crisis unit, as police often escalate situations. And lastly, work with us in the coalition and other concerned citizens to develop an appropriate use of force policy. Thank you.
So I'm not going to tackle all of that. I will say that, you know, this police department has not had a record of violence. That's just not characteristic of our police officers. I am inclined to agree with part of the assessment of the situation in that I wish the officer had had a taser. I wish there had been an alternative means of not letting that thing go where it went. But, you know, to be honest, once somebody is pounding the officer, how that was going to happen, there are different aspects of this question. What happened at the end was probably what was going to happen at the end. How it got there didn't have to get there. I mean, we need to think about police training and how you respond to seeing somebody. Like, be blunt about this. If I was a black male and a police car stopped next to me, I would probably instinctively turn around and walk away. That's not a sign of guilt. That's a sign of a level of discomfort and a desire to feel like this is where I can be safe. And so I think we are going. Pardon me? Wait, can I answer the question? Let me answer the question. We need, I think, better training. We need a better use of force policy, because I do think tasers are a totally appropriate interim step rather than saying you have to wait till you feel like you need to use deadly force. And we're going to have discussions with the department, because they're looking at this, because nobody feels good about this. If you saw the video and saw how many times that the officer actually got hit and he didn't use a gun, you look at this and you say, he wasn't looking to shoot. But when it ended up the way it did, it ended up that way because I think things were driven to a really bad conclusion. And I think we could have done this better, and I think better training would serve people better. And understanding culturally why people might choose to react one way or do something is something we could all be more sensitive to. So the police department's not going to walk away from this. We're going to continue to look at the training that people do. Some of the issues you raise are only addressable in state law. But I think, you know, all of us thought it was a tragedy. I thought I had to watch that over and over and over again. I never felt good about watching it. It was sad to watch from beginning to end. And I feel confident that people are going to look at this and figure out what we can do better. But I do think, you know, to make an assumption that this is the general behavior of this police department is not fair to the police. This is not generally what happens here. And so I think we need to temper how we talk about it, but we should expect that we get an improvement. If you don't learn stuff from this, that's a problem. And I think there's stuff to learn here.
Mark, middle.
Hi, good evening, Mark. My name's Steve Kaufman. I'm the Secretary and Board of Directors, Audubon Square HOA in Gaithersburg, and a member of the Save Kelly Park Group. On numerous occasions during your campaign, I'd heard how important it is to you to preserve green space in Montgomery County and how you wanted to cease overdevelopment. If that's true, then please help us save the last large multifunctional green space on the east side of Gaithersburg from having the Board of Education try and shoehorn the elementary school into the middle of it. Pursuant to Montgomery County Public Schools policies, it's supposed to have had a site selection committee made up of members surrounding the community. However, it wasn't until Neil Harris of the Gaithersburg City Council posted on the proposed plans for the new school that the 5 communities were advised of the situation. Since then, the City of Gaithersburg officials and the Board of Education have met with the Save Kelly Park group. As you may be aware, the city is currently in negotiations with the Board of Education. However, there are still concerns that the Board of Education is set on destroying Kelly Park, even though there are more suitable alternative sites based on their own criteria. The Save Kelly Park group is very supportive of the community and its needs for a new elementary school, but not at the expense of the park, to include increased stresses on our wildlife infrastructure and an already overburdened parking situation in our neighborhoods. As previously mentioned, we have met with the Board of Education and city officials of Gaithersburg, and we cordially invite you to sit down and meet with us as well.
I'll talk with you. And I'll look at the book.
Hi, Ms. Ehrlich. How are you doing today? I wanted to yell at you. I wanted to print some T-shirts and give you a big book, but I was at the donut shop down the street, so...
And you couldn't get out on the road.
Hey, they had old fashions on sale. Listen, I want to bring this hyper-local for a second. I want to thank everybody for coming to our community. My name is Daryl Diamond. I'm the president of the Williamsburg Village Civic Association, where the school sits. It's a great crowd tonight, but I want to bring hyper-local. We've got 2 infrastructure projects going on in the neighborhood. Big one is WSSC is replacing water lines. 2 big water lines. It's going to be a multi-year project. They're saying 2 years. It's going to be more than that. Our big concern as a community, though, is the repaving of the roads, which are already in bad condition because they haven't been touched in years. When WSSC has their contractors come out and repave over the work, what is the county going to do to inspect that paving to make sure it's not just a bunch of bumps in the road, but it's actually done correctly, smoothed over, and done to up to current standards? That's part 1. Part 2 is we have so many people here, and it's great. And when we have these events at the school, it's wonderful. Ask the folks who are parked in the neighborhood to please go slowly. It is very dark out there. And to that point, we have asked Principal Glau, we've asked the school board, and we've asked the county to supply either police officers or crossing guards at Georgia Avenue so people can park at the giant parking lot or the 2 banks across the street and still come to school functions safely. It's dangerous crossing Georgia Avenue in general, in the dark, and we've got a black jacket or something on. So thank you very much.
So I'll take the latter point under consideration, and the first one I'll find out what we do to follow up when an agency does paving, what we do to make sure the paving's up to the standard that it's supposed to be.
Okay, we got one here on more.
Yes, stand up. Congratulations on your election. I look forward to following your leadership for the next couple of years. I'm pleased to know that you have the practical knowledge and wisdom to realize that the Mid-County Highway Extended Project, the M83 for short, is a highly destructive roadway with grossly overstated benefits. You and I and many others know that there are far superior alternatives to the M83, and I'll list some of them. The widening of Maryland Route 355 from Germantown to Clarksburg with the BRT, the upgrade of Brink Road, Whiteman Road, and Stauffer School Road. That's generally the same alignment as the M83 right-of-way in the east-west fashion. Enhancements to Watkins Mill Road, especially now with the interchange is under construction at 270, and the Observation Drive connection to Little Seneca Parkway. I think that's in the county CIP perhaps. As you know, sir, smart growth includes using our existing infrastructure to improve our transportation network. What Montgomery County does not need is the replacement of our forested stream valley parks and our large intact woodlands with asphalt and concrete in the M83. So I urge you to do everything you can in your power to eliminate that roadway from the county plans and transfer the right-of-way over to park and planning for a great park. Thank you.
So I can tell you what I've asked our transportation people to work on and what I've discussed with the state of Maryland is to take 355, get rid of the 2-lane segment because that's ridiculous. That's where you start the bottleneck on both sides. and to examine redoing 355 with one additional car lane that would be southbound in the morning and then flip back to northbound in the evening. 355, the two-lane segment of it, is not overloaded by 2 full lanes of traffic. That's logically impossible. And an additional lane on 355, particularly if you add bus rapid transit, the folks in Clarksburg are running into the back of congestion that begins in Gaithersburg and in Germantown. And so if you're going to get Watkins Mill to get people to I-270, I support 2 reversible lanes on I-270, which can be done without changing the width of that road at all. And so you get the Watkins Mill interchange, and if you build 355, it's 5 lanes from Clarksburg down to Montgomery Village Avenue. That's a second cut over to get to I-270. So I think there's a way, and the bus running up 355, not just the CCT, which is envisioned on the other side, which doesn't take you directly to Shady Grove. This would give people a straight shot to say Shady Grove rather than the big looping route that the CCT takes. So I agree with you. There are other ways to do it. I think, Clarksburg got stranded in a number of ways. But we have an obligation to try to come up with something that works. But I agree with you about M83. We should be no longer cutting through parkland and wetlands in order to build roads. We need another way to do this.
Okay, Mark, on your right. This will be the last question on this side.
Good evening and congratulations. One of my close family friends has severe disabilities, and when my mom and I visit them, I often hear about the challenges in finding affordable public care centers for children with disabilities. What will you do as county executive to provide more affordable daycare centers for kids 6 and below, and extra support like counseling for their parents?
So one of the big things we're trying to do is to work on early childhood education. The good news is the state, thank you state members if you're still here, thank you Pam, is working on, actually has a plan to increase the amount of money that'll come to the counties for child care, so it makes it more affordable for households. I'm determined to provide early childhood for our 3 and 4-year-olds. Right now, we've got 50% of the kids in this county who start kindergarten are 2 years behind. So think about that. You got a 5-year-old starting 2 years behind. They do not catch up. I used to be a teacher. I taught for 17 years. You're not a miracle worker when you're a teacher. And if kids don't have the vocabulary and socialization when they start school, it's very hard to participate fully in school. And if you're coming out of poverty, if you're coming to school hungry and tired and all these other issues that compound things for children, it becomes increasingly difficult. So we've got to do something. We know that early childhood would make a difference. We know we need care. We know it's extraordinarily expensive. Child care right now is $20,000, $24,000 a year per kid. This is no longer just a problem for folks of low income. This is a middle class problem. I don't know many families that have that much disposable income lying around to spend. So we need to do a better job of providing care, and hopefully the facilities will be made available. And one of the things I was talking to the advocates, I can hand you a lot of money tomorrow. There's actually no place for the facilities. So you actually need a program to develop new centers so that you can actually fund the people to go to the centers. So this is a complex problem of both needing the space, but also being able to provide financial support to people who need it. So I hear you. As a school teacher, I want the best outcomes for kids, and when you know something works, you really ought to do it.
Last question on your left.
Hello, good night. Congratulations. I told you I was going to be bothering you, and here's I have
You're not bothering me.
one question, and also I would like to say an advice, if that is possible. The first question is, we would like to know if you are taking measurements to prevent the increase for the rent in the buildings and the apartments and business that are affected with the Purple Line, with the Metro. And
can I answer that first? I'll let you answer.
Yes.
Look, I would love to. I'm a believer in rent stabilization because there is no break on rents for people. And if rents continue to accelerate faster than when incomes go up, we're losing affordable housing faster than we can possibly build it. And if you look at Arlington County, their study shows they lost almost all their affordable housing since 2000. Montgomery County has lost 35,000 housing units since 2000. Lost doesn't mean they disappeared. It means that either the rents got so high that people can no longer afford, or lower income people can no longer afford to live here, or they were converted into condos, which also meant they couldn't afford to live there. So I would like to do something, but I got to tell you, there is no will on the council any more this time than there was before. And when I was on the council, I had 2 bills. I shopped them around. I couldn't get anybody to even second them. And this is a real problem because this county is not going to be able to address the affordable housing needs if it's not willing to do a better job of preserving housing.
Okay, the second might be like an advice. I've seen a problem all over the country with the police, but I think we can help if we teach the kids, since they are little, to respect the authority, not because they are authority, but human beings, you know? Now, they don't want to respect the teachers, nobody else, so I think at the end, when they are older, that's the problem, but the police is an adult against adult. Maybe we can do like career fairs so the kids can get to meet the police and start something like from the beginning when they are little, you know?
Well, you're talking about partly, moving toward community-oriented policing, which I actually believe in, and we've kind of gotten away from that. And if we had more community-oriented policing, you'd have more conversations in the community. If you know anything about the officers and the beats these guys have to run, the beats are enormous, and they're covered by very few people. And when somebody has a call and you get a second car going to answer the call, you have very few people left in the community. So gone are the days when we used to hope that an officer could stop a car, walk around the neighborhood, say hi, and I think it would be important to get back to that. They used to play basketball with the kids in the community. Those programs don't exist right now. So I'd like to put some life back in the community-oriented policing, because I believe, to the woman's earlier point about how do we get more civil, talking and interacting with each other will make us more civil. If you know somebody and you deal with somebody, your biases and a lot of your pre-assumptions about people tend to go away. Exposure to people is good for all of us. And so, I would say I'm going to try to push us in the direction of more involvement. Thank you.
Thank you. So that includes our listening session for this evening. We will have another listening session this Saturday at Tacoma Park Middle School at 3 p.m. And we will be at Poolesville High School at 7 p.m. on December 11th. Again, if you want to continue to give us feedback, attend one of the other listening sessions, note cards, and also visit the website. Thank you very much.